Well, 3 minutes past 9 a.m. Still driving your business in here. And of course, with quite lots of discussions, business related. But of course, before we get into our business insight at this very time, don't forget to buy government bonds and securities with Zabu. Of course, we just made your trading experience much more easy. Star 292 hash is the magic code, as you'll be availed with quite lots of options. You can buy government bonds and securities with as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings. And of course, not forgetting that the markets open at exactly 8:15 a.m. and closing at 3:15 p.m. That is East African time, Monday to Friday. And of course, except on the public holidays and the weekends when the markets are not in operation. But of course, the rest of the days, you have time to make profits and lots of money from Zabu in there. No more excuse, no more paperwork involved. There is no more hassle, no more bureaucracy. As simple as that. Zabu, my money, my future. Alltex East Africa, do something new. Of course, Uganda has been, of course, grappling with the date burdens, and almost every other year. You know, the debt keeps on accumulating every day. And now, of course, in here we see that 6 trillion to be paid. That is on the date. And of course, there is also the aspect of the rising of interest rates, which affects the date. Of course, sometimes when we delay to pay these dates, of course, interest rates keep on increasing. And it all comes back to the local native, the citizen, by, of course, the taxes which are levied for government to make sure that it can recover back the money to pay the date. Well, let's get into this discussion. Of course, we shall be returning for further analysis.
I've seen they want Bank of Uganda. They have budgeted for capitalization of Bank of Uganda to a tune of 217 billion. Then, in unfunded priorities, Bank of Uganda is going to charge, Bank of Uganda charging for services to government, unfunded, is 151 billion. Now, we capitalize you, Bank of Uganda, Mr. Bank of Uganda. When
Please
you capitalize, you want us to capitalize Bank of Uganda to a tune of 217 billion. At the same time, this Bank of Uganda charges exorbitantly the government of Uganda for all these services, and it's unfunded priorities. So I want to be convinced which one is which. You capitalize you charge me highly, you charge everything. So this animal called Bank of Uganda, this capitalization has been every almost 2 years. You know, we had at one time we had a consistent figure of 118 over the last few years. It was only last year when we never had that figure. So it seems like Bank of Uganda, we capitalize it every other financial year. So that is one. The second one, I've seen you saying ROCO, unfunded priority, 54 billion. Lubowa promissory note, that one we have deferred it, unfunded priority. Court awards, you carefully avoid putting a figure. But here in unfunded priority, you have a figure of 133 billion. And court awards come as mandatory. So, are you in a way manipulating? Because you know Parliament has been in reallocation, somehow removing these numbers. Now that you are making them unfunded priority and allocating no money, you don't want Parliament to tinker, but consequently you have manipulated these figures. Then ICJ award to Congo. I see here 248 billion for Congo award. Last year we paid another 200 something. Was it 200? 270 billion to Congo. Here you also want us to pay another unfunded period. So when it arises, what are you going to do? So is Minister of Finance, Vote 130, preparing a country for a supplementary budgeting? Because consequently what it means, these are all statutory when they come. I don't think you run away from them. So why, and you are people saying they shouldn't be, now let me go to the trend on slide 9, Chair. I've seen, and I want these good land friends to tell me. I've looked at your budget of, let me go just, before I go very far, let me go to the total sums. By 1819, your total budget was 8 trillion. The other year, 1920, 8.7. 2021, 11 trillion. 2021, 22, 13. Then you make a huge jump and you go 2022, 23, 16. This year, 18. Now, that is an alarming figure to have without a solution. And I've seen on this debt redemption, where is debt redemption on this one? Securities. When you look at it, debt redemption by 1819, what was it? It was 4. As we speak now, you have accumulated a debt you can't pay, and you have no formula on how to pay. It has gone to almost 8. So every year, this is an account, and when you look at interest, look at the interest rise on interest, on interest and how they have been rising. Loan interest. By 1819, we are paying an interest just a mere 424. Okay? Now, this financial year, loan interest is going to be 870. When you look at the trend on every parameter in the last 5 years, it's alarming, and you are going not only but for you are going deeper into the abyss. We want to ask you, you are land friends in these matters, we are not. Really, is any of you proud for this trend of our national economy? Because what amazes me is that when I look at our revenue generally, they've been increasing. By 2018, our budget was below 20 trillion. No, I mean tax collection was below 20 trillion. It was like 18, 19, if I don't have the right figures here. Today, you are projecting to collect 28 trillion. You are making no attempt to redeem this debt rollover that is hemorrhaging a country. But for every year, all what you do is to justify more luxurious expenditures. So, are you in any way, my friends in this department, helping this government by this behavior? Because this behavior and trend speaks for itself. Did you find an easy way? Because under treasury bills, these loans are not even approved by Parliament through bonds. You found an easy way on how to really heap a debt burden to the people of Uganda. Look at the cost. Interest payment this financial year is going to be 6 trillion of our hard money. People are saying 1 trillion in PDM is a game changer in the lives of people. That if you allocate 1 trillion to every parish, 100 billion, it's a game changer. Here we are losing 6. But it seems when I look at the trend, I don't see on the trend analysis you having any formula on how you reduce this. You seem like, just go, our children will find a way on how to deal with it. So are we really patriotic? And are you people, Minister not inclusive, these gentlemen here, are you really doing a good job? Aren't you really throwing Uganda into an abyss, knowing it, and every year you come here, you humble yourself, you are throwing us into the deeper end of every year.
We propose to reduce debt, but you see the interest rates rising, and also other things which are affected by debt. Mr. Chairman, we are not reducing debt per se. We are saying let's borrow within the budget. What we have budgeted for should be what we borrow. We have been even borrowing beyond what we have provided for in the estimates. But now going forward, we are saying the borrowing should be consistent. No borrowing outside the budget. And also, we have analyzed the impact of domestic debt. And we are saying, going forward, let's reduce domestic debt and take more advantage of the external sources of financing available. I'm sure Chivumbi, Honorable Chivumbi, in the alternative budget you presented, this issue was emphasized, and I'm sure these are good news for you. So the technical people can give you the analysis. Me, I'm just highlighting the principles. And this will happen, because even when you look at, like last year, domestic financing was 5 trillion. Now it has come down. It's 2 point something. Because we don't want to overcrowd the. First of all, domestic financing is expensive, and two, you are competing with me and you, private sector. Private sector struggles because the government, it is assumed that the government does not default, we pay, as and when they fall due. So this one, we need your support. We are moving in the right direction, and we want Parliament to move with us. The 8 trillion is killing us seriously. It is not good news at all. And we have already started generating ideas on, we are asking ourselves the question, what do we do to get this out of our budget? Because every year, and it's growing, you can see there is a growth of about 350 billion from the previous financial year. And the trend has been consistent. If you see from 2018 to date, this of the Bank of Uganda, we have an obligation as government, this is our bank, to capitalize it as and when its capital adequacy gets into problems. And this one, we cannot avoid it. But how do we do this? We don't normally give them money. Those of you who were here with me in the previous parliament remember this debate on whether this provision was cash or not. We debated this seriously up to the highest organ. And I came to realize after some time that this was not cash. This is budget neutral, but we have to reflect it for balancing purposes. And the Bank of Uganda, because of what you have just been saying, its capital adequacy normally falls. I don't want to say it, to go into details, but there are reasons why their capital normally gets into problems. And we have an obligation which we must keep financing from time to time.
Well, that's regarding the matters of the accumulating debt in the country, and of course getting to see, like I told you earlier, 6 trillion to be paid on the date, and of course borrowing, there is the concept that the borrowing has to be consistent, but only according, that is to the budget. You know, sometimes there is this incidence where you borrow and you actually don't fulfill what your budget, you know, the budget aligning with your borrowing. In that perspective, and it's been a great challenge, Joram.
Actually, on the 6 trillion shillings, I had a discussion yesterday with Honorable Alan Atugonza,
yes,
who sits on the National Economic Committee. And this one analyzes the national budget and everything. He says that it's not even 6 trillion that is going to finance the budget, rather the debt.
The debt, yes.
It is 17.
17 trillion.
So that means we are only going to be left with 32 trillion of the 50 trillion Ugandan shillings, of the 49.9 trillion. Just a simple approximation of, if you approximate it, it's 50 trillion. So approximately that is the amount. But 17 trillion, according to what the discussions are with the budget framework paper, will be going on to financing the debt, which debt by last year was at 78
trillion.
Wow. Now, And that is according to figures in Parliament, because Parliament is still having around 77.89.
Okay.
So the other is just a simple round off. But media has been reporting 80 trillion.
80 trillion, yeah.
And of course, you'll definitely find other media platforms, saying it's 86 trillion, others saying 79 trillion.
Yeah.
So the figures are within there.
Yeah, that's the average range. Yeah.
So, but besides that, according to parliamentary figures, it's 78 trillion.
Okay.
Now, also, besides that, if the 17 trillion is going to service the debt, that means 50 trillion won't be enough to service our budget.
The budget.
Again, we shall be forced to go and borrow
money
because ministries are going to present supplementary budgets seeking for extra money because of the fact that now the budget wasn't able to meet the expectations of what it was intended to. So I want to think that our public debt, as the public debt is actually increasing, the domestic debt is also increasing. It's 30%, according to the official figures as well. So this is actually, someone may still ask, is Uganda caught in the public debt safety trap? We are still in the safety trap for now. Yeah. Because according to the figures, we are, according to the percentages, we are around 49%. So we are around
49%.
So by the look of things, once we hit a 53%, then we are in the red zone. And it takes us back to what the PSST was saying. We are faring well, not like Ghana and Zambia. So we are roughly around 47%. So once we hit the 53% mark, then we've exceeded the public safety trap in there.
I always ask myself what, the policymakers be thinking. If they say initially the budget, this amount of money, 52 trillion, to finance, and all this is coming up, now we're hearing about part of that money, 17 trillion to fund the budget. Now, in my thinking is why? Because now this is going to to push us to more borrowing. Wasn't this foreseen before even the first framework was put out? That actually we might need 17 trillion to finance the debt. That's where I normally get confused when it comes to policy implementation and people that plan for this country, that all this comes in after, on the later, towards the late stages, of course, when the national budget is about to be, read out. And in that way, that also costs us in a way, because it shows that we don't plan. We are not certain of what we want to. It's like we decide to go this direction. After 2 months, we say, no, I think let's change here. Because I remember some time back, of course, there was talks of budget cuts in ministries. And now, before you know it, the tourism is proposing a supplementary budget, additional, and of course, so many other ministries coming in the way. It's like we are not focused as a country. If we say cuts, yes, let cuts mean cuts. Let's go by that, because that in a way is going to serve us deliberately. I think we are so much into the spirit of borrowing that even the obvious matters, when we reach a point whereby we have to really keep cool, we feel like we need to borrow. I don't know what's really wrong. It's becoming like into our bloodline that we have to borrow. That even though we say that we're not going to borrow this, that the money is going to come from within the country, it's still unrealistic. All the policymakers, now this is what we call transparency, honesty, because now this is very confusing to a normal citizen. It doesn't really add up, all this together. You talk about this, now proposing this, now this has to, now even the proposed budget, because of the date, we might need an extra. Because we can't operate it in negatives at the end of the day. If we say that we need 53 and we only avail 40 or 47 or 40, that's a 13 trillion in negative. And that still, in the later, at the course of the year, it affects you somewhere. And you might be again pulled back to borrow.
Yeah, and of course you get to ask yourself lots of these questions though. is that how are we going to contain or control this urge of borrowing all the time?
All the time.
Because first of all, the fastest measure that was done was to cut the budget, try to at least cut on the expenses, because these are
travel
reasons as to why we've been able to overborrow. And of course also they limited the salaries of government, so there is no room for salary increment in the next financial year. So all these are measures to see that we contain this debt pressure in one way or the other, so that in the long run, because when you look at the public debt increasing, it affects us in a way that even government's provision of social services is affected. There are some social services that won't be affected, that won't be provided, simply because government will be scared of getting more loans to acquire, or to acquire more loans to go in and work on certain projects. Then also, it goes back to our kind of representation from the external lenders. Because these are people who normally give us this money. Now, if they start weighing options on how we pay back and the time frame we take to pay back, they will actually stop giving us as much as we expect. This is one of the reasons as to why the IMF is delaying, bailing up Ghana, the Zambia, that the PSST is actually mentioning, even when they are seeking for a bailout from the IMF. This is not a serious, this is something that we should be looking at deeply, so that we don't get ourselves into that position as a country.
But also, like we know, borrowing is not bad, but what makes it effective is what are you going to use that money for. But I think that is something we fail to learn, and it reaches a point and the citizens actually give up on what, if the money is borrowed and it's used for other aspects. We've still not yet, because there's this aspect of return on investment, whereby let me say in the year 2006, the government of Uganda received a grant or received a loan from the World Bank for this project. 5 years down the road, these are the fruits of the project. This is how much the project has been able to contribute to the GDP. We don't see such clear reports. The transparency that you talk about, it's not there. So that puts us really in a state of worry, in my anticipation, and we don't know where it heads for this country. I don't know what you think as you're watching in here. What is the fate of this country? Of course, regarding to that rising date, 6 trillion, of course, being mentioned, but of course, as we hear from the inside sources, it will be more than this, 17 trillion, that is to finance the national debt, and this is off the proposed budget. Well, 25 minutes past 9, still discussing business-related matters. This is Matt Means Business. I'm Andrew BARIGYE with JORAM as we give you the latest of these updates every early in the morning as a business person. Very vital for your business health and, of course, maintaining a sustainable growing business at the same time. But of course, above all, when we talk business, of course, we cannot neglect talking about trading stocks. Zabu just made this a reality to any person. *292# is the code in there, as you'll be available with quite lots of options. You can buy government bonds and securities with as little as 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Of course, the market's opening at 8:15 a.m., closing at exactly 3:15 p.m. East African time. That is Monday to Friday, except on the weekends and the public holidays when the markets are not in operation. But of course, on the rest of the days, you're very free to capitalize and make quite some good, lots of profits from that regarding, well, Zabu, my money, my future, Alltex, East Africa, do something new. And now let's get into the break, and coming up is our on-ground discussion, and this time around we shall be looking at the youth when it comes to crafts, skilling, something very vital for your employment as a youth, of course, to survive the cost of unemployment in the country. Stick around.